Joe Lockhart, who was Bill Clinton's press secretary from 1998 to 2000, during the really, really rough time of trying to defend a president who had legally committed perjury. He is now a CNN political analyst, Joe Lockhart is, and he wrote this piece for CNN.com. And I think it occurred Saturday or Sunday. But here's what he says. It started on a brisk Saturday in January 2017 with an angry press secretary, Sean Spicer, looking straight into the camera and lying to the American people on behalf of Donald Trump. Yeah. You remember that? Yeah? If you remember, the lie was about the size of the Orange Bastard's inaugural crowd. And the lie was so easily disproven. All you had to do is look at comparable photographs side by side, and there was no purpose in saying it, except, yes, there was one purpose, and that was to satisfy the voracious ego of this filthy, scum-sucking bastard who has been ruining the country for 4 years. But Lockhart goes on, the lie was not to protect national security or for any other justifiable reason. Spicer stood at a White House lectern and lied simply to feed the new president's ego and ease his limitless insecurity. And over time, we've learned just how significant and prophetic that first big lie was. Yeah, haven't we? Well, what is the tally by the Washington Post now that this orange bastard has told close to 30,000 lies in under 4 years? How do you do that? Well, anyway, Joe writes that if you want to see what has happened, fast forward to this week, just passed. When Sean Spicer's fourth, fifth, sixth, whatever it's been, successor, this crazed Kayleigh McEnany on Fox News, deflected a question about the Trump administration sharing intelligence with the Biden transition team. McEnany said that was really a question for the White House. But that's her job. But she couldn't answer it right now because at that moment, on the air, she was appearing as a member of the Trump campaign. Now, let me pause for a moment. It should go without saying that you can't be a White House staffer and a campaign advisor at the same time. But as Lockhart points out, during the Orange Bastards administration, that's exactly where we are. And it would be funny if it weren't so destructive. Joe writes, this White House's antics keep reminding people of the satirical HBO series Veep. But this isn't a joke. This administration's chronic lying has divided us in this country, has degraded our trust in government. And of course, worst of all, this orange bastard and his sycophants have turned facts and evidence into slippery instruments, is what Joe says here, slippery instruments of partisan politics. Slippery instruments of partisan politics. And as the orange bastard said in a speech to the VFW in July, quote, don't believe the crap you see from these people, the fake news. What you're seeing and what you're reading is not what's happening. End quote. If that isn't straight out of Orwell, what is? Good God. And worse, if you're one of these evangelical psychopaths with your Bibles that you use as weapons, in other words, if you're part of the MAGA crowd, you only believe what Trump says. Everything else is superfluous. It doesn't matter. Of course, they don't know what the word superfluous means, but everything else is a lie. There you go. That's better. Only what comes out of the orange bastard's mouth is what they're willing to listen to and believe. So, tens of millions of Americans have trusted Trump, refused to put on a mask to protect themselves and everyone around them from COVID-19 that has killed more than 250,000 people here in the U.S. But, you know, if you're a Trump fellator, that's what you're going to do. And what does your exalted leader do? The orange bastard? He pushes to the sidelines actual infectious disease experts and instead makes a neuroradiologist, this crazy bastard Scott Atlas, the face of this administration's coronavirus efforts. A radiologist. Listen, I have this is no argument against radiologists. God knows they serve a very important function in the process of medicine, the process of analyzing, investigating, taking a look at the causes of disease, and then presenting them those findings to the actual medical doctors who are treating a disease. But a radiologist is a specialist in a very narrow form of medicine, taking a look inside the human body without cutting into it. So, as Joe Lockhart says, Trump tells us to believe that tear gas wasn't used on peaceful protesters outside the White House to clear the way for this orange son of a bitch to march over and defecate all over the grounds of a church holding an upside-down Bible. What a bastard. And half of America goes along with the lie. Despite the evidence shown on our television screens over and over and over again, evidence means nothing to these evangelical nutcases. Nothing. And then Lockhart goes on. That same half of America agreed with him that Russian interference in the 2016 election was just a hoax, and that Donald Trump himself was a victim. Oh, of course, just like you Christians, right? You're all such victims. All of your rights and freedoms are being ripped away from you. Oh, my God. Now, the special counsel, Robert Mueller, and a bipartisan report from the Senate Intelligence Committee, chaired by Republicans, said the opposite. That didn't get a lot of attention. That the 2016 election was influenced by and interfered with the help of Russian military intelligence. And let's not forget that perfect call. It was a beautiful call. It was a wonderful call. And the fake news media had completely distorted it. That was the one where the orange bastard attempted to pressure the Ukrainian president into making up bullshit about Joe Biden. So Lockhart writes, the dishonesty from this president and his press secretaries, all four of them, has us where we are today. Truth now comes, Lockhart writes, in two varieties, Republican and Democratic. And this is shaking the foundation of our democracy. This is just astonishing stuff, folks. Now, some cynics will say that politicians always lie. And for some of them, Christian Republicans, that's true. They are living, breathing examples of a lie. But there's a long tradition, Lockhart writes, of telling the truth from the White House podium. Not during the Bush years, Joe. Not at all. Not the George W. Bush years. I think of R.A. Fleischer, who is probably one of the biggest, filthiest liars ever to occupy that position. So, Joe, I'm going to disagree with you right there, pal. But he goes on at the CNN piece, for some 90 years, he writes, press secretaries have done their best to promote the agenda of their president, but have also clung steadfastly to telling the truth. What about Ron Ziegler? You know, Reagan's press sec? Well, anyway, Joe writes, why? Why have they clung steadfastly to telling the truth? The idea was to retain their own personal credibility, but also to keep the country informed. And those who strayed from that practice, Joe writes, I'm sorry, Ron Ziegler was Nixon's press secretary, of course, not Reagan's. Damn. Those who strayed from that practice, like Nixon's press secretary, Ziegler, for example, were punished not only by the reporters who covered him, but also by history. Joe writes, my own experience just 20 years ago is telling. When President Clinton was impeached for obstruction of justice and perjury over his affair with a White House intern, I was forced to concede major elements of the story as true, objective truth, despite the damage it did to Bill Clinton. If this happened today, Trump's representative would say the DNA test was rigged, and the internet would be flooded with headlines like, it was some other dude's DNA. Isn't that the truth? Of all the challenges, Joe writes, facing Joe Biden, restoring objective truth and common facts will be among the most daunting and important, but it can be done. And then Joe Lockhart has some advice for the incoming White House president, and that's to find a mistake or misjudgment that Biden or his team has made and embrace it, highlight it with the media and the public. Show that you as the press secretary, you're going to tell the truth. Credibility comes from being honest about the things you screw up. And taking responsibility, you'll remember, is something that the orange bastard told us he's never done. So, Lockhart writes, it's easy to say to the new press secretary, promise you'll never lie. The fact is, the last 4 press secretaries have promised the truth and delivered everything but. All 4 of them who worked for the orange bastard. The ability to be a trusted messenger for the president needs to be earned. And it's earned by telling the truth, even when it's difficult and damaging to your team's interests. Yeah. And then Lockhart closes with this. It took Donald Trump less than 4 years to destroy the credibility of the Oval Office. He leaves us in a place where we don't trust the evidence right in front of our nose. He did this deliberately, and my guess is he's quite proud of his work. That same deliberate effort, this time to be everything Donald Trump and his minions were not, is the only way we can return to what the late Senator Daniel Patrick Moynihan said, quote, everyone is entitled to his own opinion, but not to his own facts. End quote. Yeah, when you think about that for just a moment, the credibility, and I've mentioned this before, the credibility of just about every function of government at the top levels, where Trump could appoint these lying son of a bitches, these creeps and cretins and horrific people who are totally unqualified for the positions that Trump put them in, just like he is unqualified and has been. But when you consider the damage that they've done, any cabinet position has been utterly just muddied and scrambled and destroyed and turned into utter bullshit because of the people Trump put in. Mike Malloy here. As you know, we've switched formats and are now broadcast exclusively on the Progressive Voices Network. So that means you get fewer program interruptions, no corporate commercials, and lots of profanity. But our format change also means some of our radio listeners no longer hear the program. It's been a while since I mentioned our podcasts, so you may have forgotten that there is a way to listen to this program anytime you need a good dose of screaming. Visit MikeMalloy.com and subscribe to our podcasts. As a podcast subscriber, you can download the program to your mobile device and take me with you wherever you go. And if you have a friend who needs a dose of truth-seeking, you can give a gift subscription as well. That's MikeMalloy.com, and never miss a minute of the uncensored fun and frivolity.